Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
A very good evening to you and welcome to this very special edition of The Late Show with me, your host, Darren Lester. We are very kindly this evening sponsored by the British Council, who have brought us together today to talk about the benefits of having a foreign language assistant. Now, I'm sure that pretty much everybody in our audience, if you have taught MFL in any capacity at all, will know how brilliant the Foreign Language Assistant Programme is, regardless of whether you've had yours from the British Council or not. The plan over the next hour is for us to chat to you about our own experiences hosting a foreign language assistant, to talk about how the British Council can facilitate that with you. We'll do that a little bit later on. And just to generally remind everybody, particularly as we were talking about before we went live, now that we're in the busy speaking season, exactly how valuable the foreign language assistants can be. So, we are going to start, we're going to change things around a little bit from my original plan because we are nothing if not flexible here at Teachers Talk Radio. We are going to start by just talking about how foreign language assistants can be beneficial in our own classrooms. But before we do that, of course, I've introduced myself, but my wonderful guests on either side of me, there we go, I hope I got that right, have not. So Marie, could you start us off, let us know who you are?
Well, actually, I started as a language assistant for myself in Manchester 18 years ago this year. And so this is a role that is very important to me, and it really shaped me as a teacher today. And in the many roles that I've had since then, teaching French and Spanish, being head of faculty, subject leader for French, and whole trust leader for languages. And now I'm supporting other schools with improvement plans, coaching, and so I'm very excited to join you today to discuss this topic that is very dear to me.
Amazing, thank you. And I'm going to be really excited to talk to you about your journey from FLA through to teacher and then really climbing that ladder. Because I think in my experience, that is something that lots of FLAs do if they choose to stay in the UK, is they take that then training route. And I think it'd be really good to hear your perspective on that as somebody who's done it. So that'd be really cool. And Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy. I work as the head of French at a secondary school in South East London. I've got a colleague who now works as head of Spanish, and she started also as an FLA many years ago. And yeah, I was very excited to come on here to talk about our amazing foreign language assistants that we have at the moment working with us.
Fantastic. And then just sort of from my point of view, although I'm going to try not to talk very much, because of course, if you want to hear me speak, you can tune in on Saturday morning. But I have also worked as an FLA in a bit of an odd way round, because of course I'm a native English speaker, but I did work as an FLA in the UK for French and German, and kind of using my skills as a teacher to assist and kind of going in the way that is normally kind of backwards, I suppose, from how people usually do it. So I love the fact that we've all got kind of these wide-ranging experiences of, again, managing, being FLAs, and hopefully we can impart some wisdom this evening. That is what we want to do. So Marie, is it all right if we start with you? And if you just kind of talk us through your, I suppose, coming to the UK and starting off as an FLA, what was that like for you?
Well, I think that when I was a student myself in France, we had FLAs in English and in Spanish as well, and I really think that made a big difference for me leading the path, you know, because if you don't have anybody in your family, or if you don't have anybody that you know who's taking on that challenge to go and live abroad or studying abroad, then it's difficult to picture it, to visualize yourself. But if you've had the chance to work with language assistants as a student yourself, then I think that it really gave me the confidence to visualize what it was like. And then when I did my degree in English, I had the opportunity through my university to arrange for me to do a year in England and to be a language assistant. And so that was, that was very intimidating, but I was lucky to have a fantastic head of languages who made it very easy for me. I didn't have to worry about anything. She said, you can stay with us for a month, for as long as you need to get settled. And so all I had to do was to be at her address on that particular day. And I didn't have to worry about any admin aspect, because the university had taken care of it for me through the British Council. And then my head of languages was my new family in England. And so I was able to stay with her and her family for a few weeks. And she helped me with everything, setting up a bank account, getting a national insurance number, all these things like that are a bit tricky. And then she suggested some websites later on for me to find accommodation. She came to visit with me. She was really there, beyond a mentor, to help me through the process as well. And everything was done in a scaffolded way, rather than saying, okay, you're starting 1st of October and you've got to figure it out yourself. Things like finding accommodation, or going to the job centre to get a national insurance number. If I had to organise that so young from France, that would have been really difficult. So having that support, that scaffolded support all the way, was crucial for me to have such a great experience and be able to focus on something else. The more the life aspect, making new friends, go and visit here and there, immerse myself with the culture around me, and build a life there.
I think that's really important, isn't it? Particularly what I really picked up on, that, to be honest, I hadn't thought about before, but is the role that we as the teachers play in making the assistant's life as easy as possible, because it is such a big deal, isn't it? Going to a brand new country, maybe the first time in an English-speaking country, first time in the UK. Even though we like to think that British and French cultures or Britain and France are culturally similar, there are a lot of huge differences. And so, it's not that you are, most of the time, especially if you're going through British Council, it's not that you are bringing in another teacher and they can just be left to get on with it. You really do need to give that interpersonal support, don't you?
Yes. And they remain, not all of them, but a lot of them will be young students still. It was the first time that I went abroad. It was the first time that I left my home, because I went to a local university. So it was such a big deal.
And I think, as well as a teacher, if you manage that properly and you build up a really good rapport with your assistant, it doesn't necessarily need to be a 1 year and done relationship. That, particularly as a native English speaker, one of the things that I always find most difficult when teaching any of my languages is kind of keeping up to date with what's going on. I don't know who the French TikTokers are. I don't. I can teach Johnny Halliday till I'm blue in the face, but that doesn't mean anything to a young French person. And so, if you can keep in touch with your assistants and kind of keep that cultural link going, I think that kind of benefits everyone all round.
Absolutely. I always think the exam content, the content, that's my responsibility. But what I want them to bring extra is that their unique culture, because even if they're coming from France, but I've worked with language assistants from Quebec and from Switzerland as well. I didn't really know much about the culture in Quebec, apart from what's in the textbook. And as much as I try at A level to teach a range of aspects, not just the culture from France, then when you've got someone who's much more of an expert and who can bring that, they bring that different background, their own character as well, different accent, different speed of communication, all the idioms and slang. I spent so much time with our language assistant from Quebec, relearning everything, comparing together, discussing, the quirks of the language from Quebec, and that's a beautiful thing for the students to be able to be exposed to such a rich culture of famille, the whole French speaking community in the world, and not just France. So that means that they are not just exposed to a single story of what it is to be a French speaker, but a wealth of experiences, and because you can get a different language assistant every year. So every year you get a new person, fresh perspective, different experience, and like you said, the music as well, the popular culture, especially my students. 1 year, I thought I was being really cool, playing lots of music in the classroom and suggesting, and then they said to me, your music is quite old, miss. It's time to renew, to get to know more artists. And I realized that, yes, I'm still playing the music that I listened to before I left France, and it takes time and effort to keep up, like you said, with the culture, the TV shows, the program, the music, the TikTokers and all influencers. And so that's something that they can bring as well, and try to get students, it's the real life experience, isn't it? It's not the content for the exam, it's not the textbook, it's a genuine real life experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that is really important for us to remember, because as we talked about on the live show we did a couple of weeks ago, quite often we're so driven by the exam, and we are so driven by grades and results and all of that, that it's easy to forget that what we are teaching is a living, breathing, cultural subject, and it is about life. And it is about communicating, and it is about finding out about other people. And I agree, Maria. I think the assistant is a great way to kind of bring that in. Amy, from your point of view as a teacher, how have you found having assistants?
I feel very, very lucky in my current school, actually. So I've worked in 3 schools since I started being a teacher. My first school, we didn't have an assistant. We also didn't have A-level. So I guess
wow.
I guess because it was my first experience really working full time as a teacher, a language teacher. I'd done other experiences before abroad in teaching related roles. But in the UK, it was my first experience. And I guess I didn't realize what I was missing until I then moved to a school which had one. And then just saw the value that they brought, really. Like what you said, Marie, about that relevant, up-to-date cultural experience. Because I think, and the knowledge, as a teacher, I mean, any teacher knows that we have quite full timetables and a lot to keep on top of. And I think really, I have my own films that I like watching, quite niche films and music and things, but I don't know if that's always really what the students are interested in. So I think, being able to have an amazing, we're so lucky in our school, we have an amazing assistant. She's actually been at the school for around 17 years. But she told me the other day when I was talking to her that it's her absolute dream job she's found, because she used to work in finance before, and then moved when she had children into this role. And she's still super, super passionate about it after 17 years. And she said she absolutely loves having the time as well in her role to really get to keep up to date with French culture despite living outside of France, accompanying students on trips as well, being able to learn from them when they do the independent research projects at A-level. She said, and because we have a number of students over the years that have been from different French-speaking African countries, and they're really interested in getting to know more about their heritage and researching something related to their heritage and identity in these projects. And she said she's learned a lot through the students as well. And then I think she acts as like a storage, a human storage for all the knowledge that has been passed down through the students that she has worked with over the years in this exact capacity. And she's, so she can then share that to support and guide the students that we've got now. And yeah, I mean, she's incredible. She gets A and A stars in all the speaking elements of her exams. So she's got a formula that she's perfected over the years. And I mean, she's managed to support other assistants that we've had coming in for Spanish and German because of her experience, and across the trust as well. Yeah.
I think two things that you said, Amy, really jumped out at me. The first was how long your assistant had been at the school. 17 years is such a long time to be anywhere. Because as Marie said, usually assistants will come for a year or, a relatively short contract to do their placement abroad and then go home again, which I think is great because it means that you can get the very latest up-to-date information, the most up-to-date slang, the most up-to-date influencers and all of those things that we talked about. But if you have an assistant who can stay long term, you do then have someone who builds up particular skills in being the assistant. And because the assistant role is very different from the teacher role, there is a lot of overlap. But the two roles, in my experience, are very different. And I think if you can have somebody who specializes in being an assistant, who can build up that knowledge, who can find their niche and get A stars, that's amazing, whilst also helping the other trainees come in and make sure that everybody in the MFL faculty is benefiting from their experience. I think that's brilliant. I think that's inspirational, honestly.
It really is. And I think so often, like you said, these assistants, they might come over for a year as an experience abroad, and then maybe I've had a friend who's now a French teacher, has been head of French in another school, and she came originally as an assistant. And then she met her partner in the UK, then married, had a child, and then she moved into the teaching role. And I think from a few colleagues I've worked with, they came originally as assistants and then moved up. But what I find fascinating about Mr. Maxime is she's just like, I just love being an assistant, and I love learning constantly and keeping up to date. And I think that's the real mission of hers. And she's really interested in AI at the moment, and the role that has to play and how that impacts her role and what she can bring to the students as well. Amazing.
I love it when as individuals we can find our niche and just like, yes, this is me, I'm sorted, I'm going to be the very best at this that I can be. I think that's brilliant. Claire and Liz, you have joined us. Thank you so much. It's nice to have you here. You missed the introduction, so do you just want to let us know who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Claire Williams. I'm the head teacher of a medium-sized secondary school. We're just on the edge of the New Forest in Hampshire.
And I'm Liz Collison. I'm head of languages in the same secondary school. We have French and Spanish, and we're quite new to having assistants. This is our second assistant that we've got this year going forward. And we feel very, very fortunate to have an assistant. We don't have a sixth form. We use our assistant, I think, in quite a different way than lots of other schools. We use our assistant throughout the school. We do use her for year 10 and 11 for exam preparation, but we also use her throughout the school for the younger years. It was all part really of our plan for languages, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So, in order to improve also students' cultural awareness, open-mindedness, getting them to see their horizons could be quite different. And actually our students were wowed by the fact that somebody had come all the way from France just for them to be in their lessons, to be in the classroom, to be walking the corridors, to be sharing lunch with them out and about, clubs at lunchtime. And they were really, really thrilled by this experience. So yeah, it's been really beneficial.
And
Sure.
that's
It's
something
really
very
helpful to-
unique to our subject, isn't it?
Yes,
So that
Absolutely.
it's a great way to raise the profile of the faculty, the department in the school.
exactly. And we have quite a high proportion of pupil premium students and SEN students in our school, and we really wanted to open out languages. We wanted to make sure that everybody was getting to the point where they wanted to choose languages. We don't have languages as an obligatory subject, but in actual fact, having the assistant has just increased our numbers hugely. And as you say, the profile of the department, the buzz in the department, everybody wants to speak to the assistant. They're very, very excited. We're hoping to be able to get a Spanish assistant as well next year, because it really is a priority of the school, which I think I'm very fortunate to be in a school where that is the priority, especially a smallish secondary school without a sixth form. But the benefits are just absolutely huge. I think you'd agree, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we see it as a priority area, languages in general anyway. But what language assistants I think have brought is a whole school buy-in to languages, which may not have been there. And also from a parental point of view, we had a parents' evening where we brought parents into the Spanish and French classrooms to see how a lesson is taught in French and Spanish. They became students themselves, and they got to kind of culturally experience what it's like in a language classroom now, you know, back not doing tricolor or whatever it might have been, zigzag, many years ago, how that's completely changed, how it's very immersive, it's very inclusive, everybody's part of that experience. There's a lot of games, there's a lot of fun around languages, and the language assistants have just really added to that experience. And I think for the children, they will speak to them a different way than they do to their teachers. So again, they're getting the inside knowledge, if you like, on things that they may not ask their teacher about the country. They're finding out. We've had some lovely anecdotes, haven't we, this week with the April Fool's Day?
Yeah, I mean, she does a club which is not just for students who study French. It's for anyone who wants to go to in the lower school in certain year groups. And yesterday, of course, being the 1st of April, they're doing Poisson d'Avril. So they were all coming then to my Spanish lesson straight out of the French club, which was at lunchtime, sticking the little fish on my back and explaining to the rest of the children what the cultural things they'd learned in the club. And the club it's just going from strength to strength. So it's not how I've ever used assistants before. I used to teach in a school in London where we used them mainly with the sixth form and mainly for maybe a little bit of work with the year 11s just before their speaking exam. But we're quite a small school. We only have one class of French and one class of Spanish in year 11. So we've got the time with the assistant to utilize her throughout the school. And it's just been absolutely a game changer for us. The other thing is, because the financial commitment for a whole assistant would be quite a lot for a school as small as ours and a department as small as ours. So we're really lucky in that we're able to share our assistant with another school.
Amazing.
Which also is very good for her, like in terms of socializing, etc., and just absolutely perfect for us.
Yeah, I mean the fit works really well. So being part of Hampshire, this was set up by Hampshire. So we have another school that's fairly local to us. So they have 2.5 days with each of us, 2.5 hours with each of us, and that works really well. So we've got that person also gets to see another experience of school life as well, and they're kind of getting double the benefit. But as Liz was saying, you know, next year we're actually asking for a Spanish and a French assistant because you know, just the benefits we think massively outweigh the costs, which is honestly so small for what you get. It's incredible. And you know, we've got a cultural awareness day that, you know, they're going to be very much part of, and even part of things like PSHE and life skills, involving them in other aspects of the school that are outside of the subject, also really important, and just adds to the value for the students.
Absolutely. What I loved there is you picked up on the other thing that I was going to say about what Amy had said, which is quite often we do think of the assistants as being a sixth form perk, if you like. They get this extra person to speak to, but it is lovely when they can come down and, you know, practice the photo card or the role play, especially because role play is so difficult at GCSE, and then to take them down even further, and kind of particularly I think in year 7 and 8, where, you know, the children are still very young, the culture is still what is really fascinating, and if you can use that down in lower key stage 3 or even upper key stage 2, if you've got feeder primary schools that you would be happy to share your assistant with, I think that would be amazing for retention and recruitment as they go up the school.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, as you know, both reflected, it's very different out of a textbook, isn't it? You know, and your English French teacher telling you that, to having actual native, when they ask you about what is school really like, what are the differences? Is it true you go on a Saturday? Is it true these things really exist? And actually to have somebody there live in the classroom is a really different experience for the children. So, yeah.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out! Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!
Absolutely. Okay, well, we've heard what the teachers think, but let's find out what the students think about having an assistant.
Matilda.
I'm Freya.
I'm Olivia.
What have been the significant benefits of hosting modern language assistants for you as students?
For me personally, I think it's the emotional connection that we've got with Miss Maxime. She's always there with a smile on her face. She's always really welcoming, and she's there to support us if we need it, but she's also there to congratulate us when we do really well.
I think Miss Maxime provides us with the most up-to-date information for our exams and evidence that we need, which personally I don't think AI can offer. She gives us articles from days before and just really up-to-date information for our speaking.
I think it's really good to have that one-on-one with a teacher, because I don't think the subject teachers really have the amount of time required to practice on speaking, such as pronunciation, things like that.
How have they boosted your language learning, cultural awareness, and positively impacted you in school?
Miss Maxime has contributed positively to our well-being, because we really look forward to our speaking sessions with her, and we really enjoy having that connection and that one-on-one time to just speak and get feedback.
She's helped us with our language learning because she always gives detailed feedback and personalised feedback, and she's always there to point out where you're struggling, and she's always there to help you if you need it.
Since she's a native French speaker, it's really helpful to learn about festivals and how they're celebrated in France. So that just helps a lot with cultural awareness overall.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing your perspectives today. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And we are very lucky because Freya from the video is here to speak with us. Freya, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Ça va?
Ça va, et toi?
Oui, pas mal, merci. Why don't you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
I'm an A-level student at the same school that Miss Flynn teaches at, and I'm currently taking French.
Perfect. And it sounds to me from the video that Mademoiselle Maxime has had a really positive impact on your learning.
She has. She's been amazing. With me specifically, I really struggle with having confidence in French and my language skills. And recently we sat our assessment. So I had my speaking assessment with her on Friday. And the thing that we celebrated at the end when I'd finished was the fact that I'd just grown in confidence since the last time we'd done it. And I ended up getting 25 out of 30, which I was insanely pleased with, but more so pleased with the fact that my confidence skills had grown and my fluency and proficiency had grown as well.
That's brilliant, because I always say that confidence is so much in the speaking exam, especially because the speaking exam is so intense. You know, you're there on your own with your teacher, speaking your foreign language, correcting yourself as you go along. And I think, you know, if you can build up that confidence, then it can get you a long way. So I'm really glad that Mademoiselle Maxime has been able to impart that in you. Could you tell me a little bit about how your work with her kind of works? Do you work with her one-to-one? Are you in a group? Is it a whole period that you spend with her? Kind of what does it look like on your timetable when you see her?
We have an hour session every Friday, so I do it with another girl in my class, Olivia. We're really lucky that we only have 3 students in our French class, so it does mean that we get tailored feedback from Miss Maxime and our teachers as well. We have one lesson every week, an hour, and in that we do 4 to 6 questions depending on how the topic it lays out, or specifically the questions. So if we have to do our own research, we have less questions. But with Miss Maxime, we're incredibly grateful and lucky to have it that she actually plans out specific exemplar answers, so we know what to say and we're prepared. The only sort of times that we have to do our own research is if it's about like singers that we want to talk about, or types of music that we're interested in. So it's mostly about our specific personalized feedback and what we want to write about, rather than just having to research every single topic of it, because that really overcomplicates it, as well as having to do 3 other subjects and having to do extra research for French already can be a lot. So I think we're really grateful to have Miss Maxime give us those exemplar answers so we know what to do to get the high marks.
Absolutely. Because again, that's kind of what it's all about, isn't it? As much as linguists, we want you to know that it's about speaking French and exploring French culture and just enjoying it. At the end of the day, you're there to get an A-level. And so if you've got somebody else who can really help you to do that, because the speaking is such a big chunk of your marks, then I think that is incredibly important. Are your lessons in addition to your other timetable French lessons? So it's like
they
an
are
extra
in
lesson?
addition. They are
Okay.
an extra lesson every Friday. So we have 5 French lessons with our 2 teachers, and then on top of that, the extra speaking.
And how do you feel about that, about having an extra lesson whilst everybody else gets an extra free?
It's actually not that bad. As Matilda stated in the video, Miss Maxime is really nice and kind, and it would be a lot more difficult if she wasn't, but she is really nice, and it is nice to have that time, because we know that it's going to be beneficial when it comes around to A-levels and when we get those good grades, because the teachers currently, they don't have the capacity to teach us the speaking in the lessons, because we're already spread so thin with how much topic that we have to cover in so little time.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm grilling you a little bit now. Before, we were talking about how sometimes for the students it can feel a little bit different to talk to your assistant compared to your teacher. Do you feel that way? Do you think there's a difference in how you approach the two?
It is different, but I think because we have to speak more formally, so in day-to-day lessons with Miss Flynn, it's definitely less formal because we're just learning the language, whereas with Miss Maxime, it definitely is formal because it's more structured and we have to know the topics that we're doing, whereas with Miss Flynn, we're learning. So it's definitely different how we speak to her, but overall, it was just the same as if we were speaking to Miss Flynn or Miss Galbert.
Fantastic. And what would you say if we had maybe some head teachers watching who were thinking about getting an assistant for their French department but were on the fence? What would you say to them as a student?
From a student's perspective, I think they're incredibly vital and crucial. She's helped us so much, especially in regards to speaking, but also outside of speaking. So she teaches us cultural awareness. So there's things that I wouldn't have known about France if she hadn't told me. She keeps us up to date with everything. So recently there was an agriculture riot and she told us about that, and we wouldn't have known if we hadn't been told. So there's things that she tells us that we wouldn't be able to know. And I think if you have to get one, you should get one, because she is vital and crucial to our A-level. I think I wouldn't be able to get the grades that I'm getting currently without her.
Amazing. And then just because I'm nosy.
So it's a great way to model keeping up with current affairs as well, when you have someone who encourages you to do it and who makes it easier for you to find the information, because the internet is such a vast place, isn't it, for students. Keeping up with what's going on can be a bit difficult.
Exactly, and she's always there with new current information about anything. So if there's any sort of protest going on that we wouldn't have known about, she tells us. But it's also to make sure that we don't have any false information, because there is so much out there on the internet. There could be forums that we're going on that simply just aren't true, and stating that in your exam is not going to get you any marks. So she tells us everything we need to know, and it's 100% true, and we know and we can trust her with that, rather than the internet, which is not always 100% reliable.
And she knows specifically what's relevant for the exam as well, so to help you with the card aspect of the speaking exam.
Yeah, she's 100% prepared whenever we have a lesson, and we always practice with her. So before our mocks, we always practice sort of how we're meant to like lay it out. And so we'll do the 6-minute prep with her, and then when we come to the actual mocks, we're prepared and we know what we've got to do.
I think that's really useful, and that's really helpful. I hadn't thought before about the kind of fake news aspect of it, but it is true. You know, this stuff exists just as much in our target language countries as it does in English countries. And I think, you know, you're absolutely right. It is very easy to go online and read something and believe it and almost give it an authority because it's in French rather than being in English, and you sort of just trust it. So it is quite nice to have somebody who will give that critical eye and say, actually, no, that's not true. And open it up to a debate, which is always quite fun to do in speaking lessons.
Yeah, I think with me having another student in there is always debates.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. And how do you find that with the other students? Is it embarrassing, or do you like that there's somebody else there to speak with you?
It's not embarrassing because me and her get on really well. So because we have such a small class, we all get on really well. But I think it's good for me because I have another perspective. So I have a student's perspective as well as Miss Maxime. So she can also tell me things that she's seen that I need to improve on. And it's the same with her. So if she's not as confident in her speaking, I can be there and help her prep beforehand. But we have that sort of trust in there already. So I think with having her there, it is beneficial. But I think as a whole, Miss Maxime being there, helping us, and Olivia being there, I get that personalised feedback from both of them. So it's not embarrassing, it's just, I think, beneficial for both.
That's really good. That's really good. And it is, you know, the more pairs of ears you can have when you're speaking, the better.
Exactly.
Oh, amazing. Well, Freya, I'm sure you've got so much homework and revision to do, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I love when we have student perspectives on the show, because I think the voice of you all, you know, the people who are supposed to benefit from this stuff is so important. So merci infiniment, and best of luck for your speaking exam, which is must be coming up very, very soon.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We've talked about pros and cons. Let's talk about logistics, which is always the least interesting part, but quite often, particularly if we've got members of the audience who are trying to sell this concept of a language assistant to senior leadership, is going to be what is most relevant. So we heard from Freya that in terms of timetabling, her sixth form lessons happen fortnightly, kind of off timetable, as it were, so not a part of the allotment, which I would imagine for lots of head teachers or heads of department, whoever does individual timetabling, would probably be quite difficult to structure and to manage. Marie, in your experience, how has it worked? Have you, with sixth formers, have there been instances where they've had lessons outside of their timetable allotment, or has it usually happened within lesson time?
So same experience as Freya's experience. A-level is the priority for us, then GCSE, and then if we've got extra hours in the allocation, which is quite rare, then we get the language assistant to work with students lower down the school, particularly bilingual or native speakers, and which is particularly useful if the main teacher is not a native speaker, and so that allows for that extra stretching. But so with A-level, it's they get 1 hour every week, 1-to-1, and that's an hour extra. And so on their 2 weeks timetable, that's 2 extra hours. Nobody's ever said anything, like you mentioned their friends have a free and they have that extra lesson. They look forward to it. Parents mention it to us as well. They're talking about the language assistant at home and how beneficial the experience is. Usually, the gap between GCSE and A-level is so significant, and the demands of the speaking exam means that it's quite challenging for us teachers to facilitate those rapid progress. But thanks to the language assistant, we see incredible progress in speaking, in particular by Christmas, with that 1-to-1 weekly session. And Freya's mentioned quite a lot, her personalized experience that she is with that one person who's able to guide them, scaffold the learning, and provide something very unique for every student. The other students in the video also mentioned the well-being, and so for students who are particularly more concerned about the speaking element, the speaking exam, that provides so much extra support and reassurance. They've got somebody guiding them step by step, working on those pronunciation, the intonation, advising on every step of the way. It makes such a huge difference to the confidence, the motivation, and that goes way beyond the exam.
Yeah, we're talking in TTR MFL Journal Club at the moment, we're talking a lot about exam stress, exam anxiety. A lot of the research that we're reading is all centered around that. And it is amazing the difference that the assistant can make in not negating, but reducing that pre-speaking exam anxiety by being there to warm up, to practice, but just by, let's be honest, pretty much giving them the exam experience every week for 2 years. They walk in, it was my experience that my students would walk into the exam and come out and go, oh, well, that was just the same as being in one of our speaking lessons. And so it really does help them to calm and not be so stressed, which is...
Yeah. Like Amy, I've had incredible results with speaking at A-level every year for so many years, thanks to that teamwork with the language assistants. And I always have lots of students at GCSE who they're considering A-level French, but the speaking exam is a bit scaring them.
Yeah.
And so that's always, on options evening, that's always one of our best cards to talk about the experience with the language assistants and that 1-to-1 session that they will get every week, practicing, providing a tailored lesson for them.
I would completely agree there. And what's been great recently, actually, particularly when throughout A-level actually, is when we as teachers or heads of department look at the students' data or get to see how they're doing in class, and then thinking, oh, this student needs to work on something very specific here. We can say, okay, at the moment, how they're doing in the speaking that you're doing with them. If they're doing well, if they're up to where you want them to be. Perhaps you could spend X amount of time during the session on this, and then they get that one-to-one support. And also when we looked, I think you mentioned timetabling before. So one thing we look at really closely is actually throughout the year, we look at where students might need a bit of extra support. Maybe they can have a one-to-one session and other students are in a group and then they get a bit of extra time. And we work with the language assistant to kind of make it work as best possible for the students and where they're at the time. So not just with a focus on speaking.
And I think, we were talking at the top of the show about supporting the language assistant and kind of making sure that it's as worthwhile experience for them as it is for our pupils. And I think those who want, like Marie, to take the pathway from assistant into teacher, giving them that responsibility, showing them what it is to plan the lessons, deliver, grammar and vocabulary, and giving them the opportunity to figure out what British students find difficult about their native language, I think is really good for their CPD as well.
Yeah, we've actually got a learning support assistant at the moment with us who's working across the school, but she's French. She used to work in the aviation industry and now has a family, wants a different lifestyle. So she's joined as a learning support assistant, but she's actually been working really closely with us in French, kind of across the school, but also an additional support for students, specific students in A-level, as that was a focus for us this year. But yes, she's considering teaching as an option, and I think it's a great exposure there if you can come in at an assistant level. And and then I think throughout the last kind of year and a half that I've worked with her, she's just grown in confidence, and I can kind of just leave her at the beginning. A lot more guidance was needed, and now she's kind of saying, okay, I'm working on this, what do you think? And it's great for us as teachers.
Brilliant. Sorry, no, go ahead.
Sorry, because we use the assistant throughout the school, and quite a big proportion of her time is used with the lower school. They're big, busy, mixed ability year 7, 8, and 9 classes. So what we've done both years now that we've had an assistant, for the first probably up until half term, she's actually worked with the teacher in a team teaching scenario rather than sending students out straight away, and that has worked really well for her own sort of CPD, as it were, just seeing how we teach languages in our school, seeing what the students are like, seeing how they react. And also it's excellent for all the students, for every single student to know who this was, because our students, they're not necessarily the best travelled students in the world. We're really trying to widen their horizons, and just the fact that they had that access at the beginning, then afterwards we were able to send them out in some tiny groups, which they're not used to doing at all, say groups of 3 or 4, which was comfortable for the assistant, or is comfortable for the assistant, but also really exciting for them, and enable them to ask their own questions and to find things out that as a teacher of 30 children in a class, you'd never be able to tell them. So I think it works even in a lower school setting as well. That's how we've used it, really, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think obviously they've changed the way in which the curriculum is now with the phonics, the kind of read aloud kind of option. I think again that confidence boost of hearing the pronunciation of our children is we've just noticed a huge. You were in a French class the other day, weren't you? And the absolutely, just walking in and hearing students talk, now, and they know that themselves. You can hear that confidence boost when they are speaking aloud, and that makes a massive difference.
Fantastic. I love the fact that you start your assistant in the classroom, because I think what that also does to the students is it tells them this person is a teacher. Because, particularly if we have assistants who are maybe first, second year in university, maybe third year doing their year abroad, wherever they are, they're probably not that much older than our year 13s or even the year 11s. And so it is good to make sure that right from the offset, they are positioned as an adult to a teacher. And so you treat them that way. Yes, the relationship might be a bit different, but they are no different to your French teacher.
No, absolutely. And actually that they're really seen as role models, because of that closeness in age. Actually, I think that more than anything, all the research will tell you, won't it, that closeness in age actually really helps them to be role models in the classroom in a way that they may not necessarily see us. So I think that's really important.
I remember in my A-level German, we had me and my friend who I'm still friends with now, we did German together, and we did our speaking sessions together. And I think he was not that much older than us at the time. And I think he was from Berlin, and we were just so inspired. So that summer when we finished our A-levels, we were like, let's go to Berlin, and just had a great experience there. And yeah, really, to be honest, really inspired by him and our conversations with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm actually still in touch with from my own, I mean, a long time ago now, but my own French assistant from Clermont-Ferrand when I was in the sixth form. I'm still in touch with her now. And when I was living in France, I used to go and visit her a lot. It was a really special relationship, something that really made me want to study languages. So that's how I want to inspire. I mean, our students are younger than that, but that's the kind of inspiration I want to give them.
Wow.
Snap, Clermont-Ferrand was where I was in France.
Oh, wow.
Which is small world.
Yeah, I used to travel there. I didn't live there, but I used to travel there to see her, who'd been my assistant, because she was a really close. Yeah.
Talking of small worlds, when I was on my year abroad in Italy as part of my degree, I went skiing for the weekend, and I was just at a little bar on the slopes, and I was just on my way to the toilet, and I turn around and get a tap on my shoulder, and it's my A-level French teacher in Italy. Very small world.
Amazing.
It's interesting, isn't it? The impact that there's an impact there and then in the classroom from having a language assistant, but it's also worth thinking about the long-term impact, like your experiences. You know, what happens next after they leave sixth form, our students, because sadly, us teachers, we don't get feedback after they leave, or it's very rare. A few years ago, I got a beautiful email from a former student who'd gone to university a few years before then, and he wrote, I'm writing from the train on my way to be a language assistant in France. And I thought, you would like to know. And he ended with, I'm going to be the new Clara. And Clara was the name of the language assistant he'd worked with in his last year. And so I'd love to think that she modeled that experience for him. She gave him the confidence to take the step to do it, to do that year abroad. And he mentioned her as a reference, you know, rather than just see his own experience. And so it's that unexpected benefit that is the after life in school. They're projecting themselves in the future and aspiring to challenge themselves to create that opportunity for themselves, you know. And it's not as intimidating because they've met somebody who's done it, you know. So it's not a foreign concept for them anymore.
I just think it's something that I really feel strongly, or we feel strongly, that more, it's quite unusual to have assistants in schools like ours, or just generally people think it's too expensive or whatever. But I would so definitely say that the benefits outweigh the very minimal costs, really. And we're very lucky in that Hampshire County Council has a designated person who sorts out most of the paperwork and everything for the British Council. So it hasn't been at all onerous for us to do this.
Not at all. And if we've had any, you know, issues at all, it's been easy to sort out. Even our governors have been involved, so our governors have also put them up to stay as well. So that it's been a whole community aspect to the school.
That brings us on quite nicely, actually, to the final nitty-gritty part that I wanted to talk about. So just before I ask the question, once again, a big thank you to the British Council for sponsoring this show, for having us here this evening to talk about the FLA programme. Of course, you don't have to go through the British Council in order to get a foreign language assistant. There are all sorts of ways to do so. But Claire, I'm particularly interested in your experience around the arrangement of getting your assistant. How exactly, from an organizational perspective, how did you go about that?
So we have in Hampshire, we have kind of network meetings for each of the subject areas. So Liz was part of the MFL network meeting, and this was raised as an idea and a concept, you know, to the schools to be interested in. And she came back incredibly enthused. There's always been incredibly enthused about, you know, this concept, and obviously brought it to me. And it was, you know, it was such an easy yes, because, you know, we've been working a lot on trying to raise the profile of languages anyway. But actually, it was so accessible to be able to do that. This wasn't an addition to any timetabling or anything like that. That, you know, this person is involved in and around the school day anyway. but also at lunchtime, lunchtime clubs, all of those things. I just want to raise it's about the involvement of every aspect of school, tutor time, right the way through. So yes, it benefits languages, but it actually benefits the whole school community right the way through. And so for me, it was just a very easy yes, and the fact that we could share this person with another school, like all schools, we are, financially aware of where the situation is. So to be able to actually share this with another school gave that, our assistant a great experience, but also meant it really, really manageable. And, as I was saying before, we want to do exactly the same for Spanish and French to run alongside each other next year. And we've gone out to a couple of other local schools to see if we can get interest there again to have a shared experience. So awesome. Actually, I just think, it, honestly, the simplicity and the ease of which it is to do, I couldn't fault, so this is not something that I think is an onerous thing. It's very, very simple and accessible, and doesn't mean a huge change to your timetabling, the school day. It actually I can only really see benefits at all to the organisation.
And I think, Liz, you must have thanked your lucky stars when you came out of that meeting, that you've got a head who will support that and who you could go to.
Because I know plenty of colleagues in other schools that haven't got that support, that haven't got that priority for languages within their secondary school. Also very, very fortunate that we have this person within Hampshire coordinating the whole programme, because it makes the finding someone to share with a lot easier. And he also facilitates all the assistants in Hampshire meeting up, so that when they don't know anybody, they're meeting up with the other assistants from Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, socializing. And we did have a few issues last year with the assistant with accommodation and things, which we sorted out ourselves, but then we needed more assistants, and Hampshire were there to help us with that as well. So we have been extremely fortunate.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant that Hampshire will do that, because we were talking about Marie's experience right at the beginning of the show, and we talked about how important it is for the HOD, but for the whole MFL faculty to be there to support the assistant during that transition, but to then have external influences as well, like the LEA, the county council, providing things and helping to make their lives better. It makes your life easier, but also. And I don't want to get patriotic here, but it says something good about the UK, doesn't it? That we respect these people who are coming over, and things will be put in place to help them. I think that's really positive.
Totally. And the children really, they ask those questions. Where are you staying? What have you seen? What have you been to see yet? What about going and visit this place or go and see here? So they're getting really involved in that experience too. And I talk about the immersive experience of it all. Our assistants come to the school shows. They come and celebrate at Christmas. It's about the whole experience. So we are trying to also think about what it is like from their perspective to come in and really understand a secondary school in a British setting as much as it is for us what we gain.
Hi, secondary school teachers. We're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering math circles across the UK.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it can be that reciprocal relationship, can't it, between teacher, assistant and pupils, where everybody learns from each other, everybody enriches each other. And you end up, whether it's a year or 17 years, you end up all being better for having had that experience together.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then, you know, it's very difficult. You know, every school's got its different priorities, and there's obviously, you know, things you're trying to have school improvement on. And yes, languages is part of that. But this is, for me, is far outreaching. It's not just about a language benefit. It's a whole school benefit. And particularly things around talking about kind of life skills, you know, and students' cultural awareness and making them more open-minded about life, you know, all of those things, you know, how does the voting system work in France? What's that about? You know, all of those kind of experiences that our children would never have known or perhaps even really known any more about till they got to an A-level stage of language. So I think that some of those later topics and things that you might cover, we're covering at a much earlier stage, even if it's just at an understanding level.
But that's really important, isn't it? Because we, as much as we would love some kind of, you know, post-16 baccalaureate where a language was compulsory, that's not the state that the country is in right now. So a lot of our young people will finish their language learning at 16, or maybe even earlier if the school doesn't insist that the MFL is compulsory. But we don't want those young people to not know about these countries, to not know this cool stuff. You know, to not know what the voting system is like, to not know, you know, that you are majority at different ages in different countries and what that means. And so, yeah, I think from a whole school perspective, if we're keeping an eye on cultural capital and broadening our students' horizons, I think that's really, really important. I think that's really positive.
Yeah, definitely. And also we find at the moment in the current climate with trips becoming so expensive and not all of our families can afford to send there. We do run a trip to France and Spain every year, but it's quite a small number of children that can go, even with the support that we offer as well, the financial support. But the assistant is there for the whole year and available to everybody. And it is the whole cultural capital issue that not everybody can afford to pay for that. And we can provide that through the assistant to some degree.
Yeah, and that's a really important point because, you know, we absolutely do love the trips and the children love that too. We've had to reduce them to kind of a one-night stay at the moment. So because of cost, you know, it has now got to that level. You know, yes, that's a fantastic immersive experience and it is lifelong. You know, they're going to remember those things. But this is a person a whole year spending in their classroom, you know, so that short-term buzz that they get out of going to the country can be a whole year's worth of experience in a classroom. And it's immediate, isn't it? The feedback's immediate. Like you're not going to get that from the textbook. You're not going to get that. It's there and then in the classroom, that immediacy.
And I think, you know, I've just been thinking about using the assistant more broadly over the curriculum, because one of the big things that I always try and instill in my students is that if you like doing something in English, you can do it in Chinese, you can do it in Spanish, you can do it in whatever. And so I think if you are deploying your assistant, not just in your MFL classroom, but elsewhere, then they can see that, you know, oh, okay, well, my Spanish assistant is studying biology at university. And so she's in my GCSE biology class and she's telling me about biology in Spanish. And that's really cool because it exists there too. And it kind of helps, or it can help to bring the language to life for our young people, can't it? And show them that it's not just conjugating verbs and learning the difference between masculine and feminine.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have all been amazing guests. Thank you ever so much. Just as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you each to, if we had to say one thing to a member of SLT, a head teacher, who maybe is still on the fence, we've not done quite good enough a job to convince them in the last hour, what would you say to convince them that an FLA is the way to go? Marie, should we start with you? Putting you on the spot now, sorry.
I think we've all talked quite a lot about the cultural capital that the students can gain from the experience. You know, from students to staff as well. I know that I've massively benefited every year from having that person joining our team and bringing a whole new perspective. I'd also say that, you know, you were talking about school trips just before. I always use the language assistants to go on trip, and that reduces the cost of the trip because there's no cover costs.
Yeah,
you know, and so whether it's trips or clubs as well, lunch club, after school clubs, you know, SLTs are very keen on personalized intervention at GCSE and A level, and so we've got that extra person as well who's able to help. Our language assistants also help us when we do mock speaking exams, rather than getting somebody else to do the invigilation. Then the language assistants sometimes volunteer on their day off.
We've done that this year as well.
To help supervise the students, invigilate, and help for a smooth running of the day. So it's a great addition to the team.
All right, thank you. Amy, how about you?
Wow, to follow that, I feel like you covered pretty much all of the points there. I would echo, really. From my perspective, just having that extra member of the team definitely is wonderful. And I think for Freya really said it as well from her perspective, from the students' perspective, just that confidence for our students. And yeah, I can't add much to what Marie said, actually. I was just sat there nodding.
Your speaking exams, your results.
Of course, I think the results speak for themselves. Yeah, the results speak for themselves, really. I think in our case,
argument.
Yeah, I think if Mr. Maximi were one at some point ever to want to leave, I think British Council, from the sounds of it, sounds like a great programme, and somewhere where we might explore something.
Yeah, that's it, because that will be a scary thing, won't it, when you've got Miss Maximi, who's been there for so long and is so such a part of the school, who will at some point far in the future may look to retire. You never know. Then, you know, it's hard to replace somebody like that. But when you've got an association like the British Council that does this all of the time, you know, they know what they're doing. They can, you know, not ever replace the person who is going, but they can facilitate the next generation. I think is probably the easiest way to say it. Liz, how about you?
I think I would say, looking from the students' perspective, especially our range of ages of students, I'd say two words really: enthusiasm for and motivation towards learning languages. And not necessarily, at the moment we only have a French assistant, we want to have a Spanish one as well, but not necessarily just to French, just to seeing languages as a real skill. I think it's really changed the students' perception of that. Would you agree, Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think for you know, to speak to other people who are going to make these decisions, honestly, I can't iterate enough. The cost is really small for the benefits that you get, but also it's not about just what it gives to languages. It's actually what it brings to the whole school. So yes, it raises the profile of the subject, and that is absolutely crucial. But it's actually the immersive experience for the entire school community that I think is a really good takeaway.
Absolutely. I feel like we've been very British and skirted around the cost. But, you know, the fact is we recognise that taking on a new member of staff is expensive. You know, staff costs are expensive. But at the end of the day, and I recognize that I say this as somebody who is not a head teacher, will never be a head teacher because I do not have the head for that. The money is there to be spent for the benefit of our young people. And if we can take our language assistant and absolutely use them in the language classroom to benefit them for French and Spanish and whatever else it might be, but also use their other expertise. If they are very much into Dungeons and Dragons, they can run D&D club after school. If they speak Swahili, they can run Swahili club. They are not, they are fully fledged real people. They are not kind of just dictionaries on legs. And so, they can really be used to enhance the profile of the school and the school's offering as much as anything else. So I think, again, recognizing that I'm saying this as somebody who doesn't have to deal with budgets, I think value for money.
Absolutely, and talking as I know other secondary schools will be, but in a very cash-struck school, I can't tell you, the benefits are massively outweigh.
Well, thank you, Marie. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Liz, for joining me this evening. It's been an amazing conversation. I've loved hearing all of your perspectives, your diverse perspectives about working with assistants and having them in your schools. It's been brilliant. Certainly given me a lot of food for thought. Even as somebody who, like I said, has worked with assistants, has been an assistant, it's been really interesting to hear what you've said about deploying your own and working with them and thinking about how we can use our assistants differently, treat our assistants differently to really make sure that we maximize their use. For me, at least, it has been an amazing hour and I've learned so much. So thank you to all four of you, and to Freya, of course, who is still there in the background for giving up her time in an incredibly busy time of year to be here with us. Couldn't have done this show without you. So thank you very much. We couldn't, of course, have done this show without our sponsor this evening, the British Council. So a huge thank you to them. If you are interested, of course, in having a language assistant and you want to do that through the British Council, then please do head over to their website. There are all sorts of useful web pages and contact details that you can get from there. And you can start that journey because, trust us, it's worth it. It's worth it. A quick plug for me. If you have enjoyed this evening and you would like to hear more from, unfortunately not from my guests, although if any of you would like to come on the show on Saturday mornings, I would love to have you. You can tune in 9 a.m. Saturday mornings. I host the Saturday Breakfast Show here on Teachers Talk Radio. Also, because I imagine that the bulk of our listeners are MFL teachers, I will remind you that I do host the monthly TTR MFL Journal Club, wherein I send out journal articles each and every month. We read them, we get together on Zoom of an evening, very informal, very low-key, and we just chat about what we've learned. I have sent emails out to that today, but if you're interested in joining, you're not signed up already, you can go to the TTR website and use our form there to join. Thank you to everybody who has listened in this evening. Have yourselves a great rest of your Wednesday. We're surviving another week, everybody. We can do it. It's almost Easter. Thank you all very much.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.